morning. First this morning, British farmers tell this programme they can't sleep at night and feel under attack by some vegan activists who describe them as rapists and issue death threats. Concerns over animal welfare and a desire for a healthy lifestyle have seen veganism grow in popularity. There are now well over 500,000 vegans, compared to 150,000 10 years ago, with many more committing to go meat and dairy free for this month, for Veganuary. But some animal rights campaigners believe they can save even more animals through vegan activism, such as holding regular protests outside farms and abattoirs. In most cases, it is peaceful and legal, but farmers say they're also facing regular harassment and abuse. Our reporter Amber Hack has spent time with one vegan group called the Save Movement, which says it has a non-violent approach to campaigning.
They say their cause is compassion for animals.
What's going on in there is an injustice.
Concern about animal welfare and a desire for a healthy lifestyle has seen a huge jump in the number of us going vegan, which in turn has led to a rise in those speaking out about animal rights.
What's going on in there is extreme. What's happening to these animals is extreme.
But when does activism become extremism?
Standing up against the animal holocaust.
And what threat is that message causing to Britain's farming industry?
When you're being called murderers and rapists, that is overstepping the mark there.
There's no doubt that veganism is one of the fastest growing lifestyles, with demand for vegan and vegetarian food increasing by 987% last year in Britain. Vegans don't eat or use any animal product or dairy. Most have a deep belief we shouldn't kill animals at all. Close to half of all the UK's vegans are aged 15 to 34, and it's a generation that's now taking up the fight for animal rights. A new group is the Save Movement. There's 42 branches across the UK. They say they have a zero-tolerance approach to animal exploitation. They spend weekends waiting outside slaughterhouses, stopping trucks of animals before they're killed.
A lot of dedicated activists standing out in this weather to bear witness to animals. Obviously what's going on in there is an injustice.
They want to show you exactly what happened to the animal that ends up on your plate.
The first time I'd ever come, I'd prepared myself mentally for seeing pigs on trucks, and what I hadn't prepared myself for was the screams.
The group says that activism isn't violence and that they have a love-based approach.
Not everyone's like you and don't care about animals.
Oh, I do care about animals.
You care about animals,
yeah, absolutely.
But you condemn them to a slaughterhouse when you eat them.
The protest started out peaceful, but it's not long into us filming till we see the lengths some of the protesters are willing to go to.
Yeah.
So a group of us decided to go in private entrance to see if the staff would allow us just to spend a few minutes with the pigs.
You're on private property, get off the...
It got really heated.
How dare you treat us like that?
One of the girls was just picked up and flung right at me. You could just hear the pigs screaming. I said, we just want to acknowledge the fact that the pigs existed, that they deserve some respect at the end of their lives.
Well, there's no need to push us.
The police came in and tried to calm it down.
This is private property. I respect your right to protest.
The footage quickly spread across social media within days. Whilst the movement has exploded in the past decade, the Vegan Society came up with the term veganism in 1944.
The main dish is made from nuts, whole cereals and soya, which combined are just as high in protein as meat and considerably cheaper.
They say they don't condone any illegal activity, including trespassing on property. And activists are up against an industry that makes billions.
Stop this! Hey, buddy!
Come on, get back to that line. If you get hurt here, I'm responsible.
Farming and meat organisations have met with counter-terrorism police in response to the growth of the movement. The National Pig Association tells this programme its members can't sleep, with activists allegedly turning up at farms and slaughterhouses at night. They called battling vegan activism one of their main challenges for 2018. Over 1 billion farm animals are killed each year in UK slaughterhouses. And the UK has one of the highest animal welfare standards in the world, with the Animal Welfare Act making it an offence to cause unnecessary suffering to any animal. Yet farmers tell us they're being subjected to intolerable abuse.
I don't take any issue with vegans, but what we do care about is when it turns militant.
Do you think the industry feels under threat by this?
People are feeling very threatened, but when you get people storming the mart or spraying graffiti like has been happening, that's when individuals feel threatened, and that's really when it's not okay. When you've got people wondering, oh God, I hope my calves are going to be safe tonight. It is starting to become a bit of a problem now when people are getting phones and cameras shoved in their faces, getting interrogated about it when they're just the bloke that drove them there.
How do you feel when you get called a murderer or that you're inhumane to your animals?
Well, I find it degrading, I find it insulting, and I frankly find it barbaric that somebody would accuse the people that make a living off of working the land of mistreating their livestock. When you're being called murderers and rapists, that's overstepping the mark there. I mean, for fairly obvious reasons. But then, of course, you do get death threats, which is quite ironic coming from people that want peace for animals and everything, but then they tell you that, oh, I hope you and your family go and die in a hole for what you do.
Down the death aisles.
What's going to happen?
You'll never go vegan.
What's going to happen, my friend?
What do you think to those people that say the way you behave is almost like an extremist?
An extremist. I would say, as vegans, we want peace, okay? Now, UK is already a country who cares about animals, okay? People in this country care about animals, but their actions don't reflect that. When they buy a chicken breast, that flesh was torn off of an animal who didn't want to die.
Standing up against the animal holocaust.
Do you think you're doing God's work in here, or you're doing God's work here? People who justify killing animals in the name of God, I question. I say, do you think God really wants this?
Do you feel like that's your place to question such a kind of personal
Okay, so I'm defending animals. I'm speaking for animals. If abolitionists didn't speak up for what happened back then with slaves, it would have never been abolished, okay? And I'm sure it made some slave owners a little bit angry to not have their slaves picking their cotton for them. Okay, we want their job not to directly involve a victim.
If everyone ate plants, we'd be growing a lot less plants than we had to feed animals too, bro.
Human beings can voice their suffering, okay? They've got a chance to escape, okay? Animals have no chance. They are vulnerable.
I don't think that they can understand or differentiate between the fact that different animals have different purposes. That is an attack on me and people like me, my family,
Inherently, dogs and pigs are the same, but we condemn pigs to gas chambers.
Farming isn't ever going to stop. We're always going to be here. We have to be. We've got people to feed.
If you are a vegan activist or a farmer, do get in touch this morning. Let us know your views. Have some messages here. Denise on Facebook says, as a vegan, I'm always told that eating meat is a personal choice, yet what about the choice of the animals who might want to live? There is no such thing as animal welfare and humane slaughter if a sentient life is taken against their will. This text from Vegan in Norfolk: most social change starts with groups of people standing up for what they believe in. Veganism is no different. The sooner we realise that the taste of food isn't worth more than the life of another creature, then the better. Craig says, in my experience, vegans are an extremely hypocritical, confused lot. We're going to talk more about vegan activism later on at about 10:10. So do send in your messages and we'll feed them into the conversation. Hello, good morning. Welcome to our programme. British farmers tell us today that they can't sleep at night and they feel under attack by some vegan activists who call them rapists and issue death threats. Concerns over animal welfare and a desire for a healthy lifestyle have seen veganism grow in popularity. There are now over 500,000 vegans compared to 150,000 a decade ago, with many more committing to go meat and dairy free this month. But some animal rights campaigners believe they can save even more animals through vegan activism, such as holding regular protests outside farms and abattoirs. In most cases, it's peaceful and it's legal, but farmers say they're also facing regular harassment and abuse. Our reporter Amber Hack has spent some time with one vegan group called the Save Movement, which says it has a peaceful approach to campaigning. We brought you her full report earlier. Here's a short extract before we have a conversation about this.
There's no doubt that veganism is one of the fastest growing lifestyles, with demand for vegan and vegetarian food increasing by 987% last year in Britain. Vegans don't eat or use any animal product or dairy. Most have a deep belief we shouldn't kill animals at all. A new group is the Save Movement. They spend weekends waiting outside slaughterhouses, stopping trucks of animals before they're killed. When we filmed with them, some protesters took the opportunity to take it a step further and trespass on the property.
Get on private property, get off.
It got really heated.
How dare you treat us like that?
One of the girls was just picked up and flung right at me. You could just hear the pigs screaming. I said, we just want to acknowledge the fact that the pigs existed, that they deserve some respect at the end of their lives.
Farming and meat organisations have met with counter-terrorism police in response to the growth of the movement. The National Pig Association tells this programme that battling vegan activism is one of their main challenges for 2018.
I don't take any issue with vegans, but what we do care about is when it turns militant. People are feeling very threatened, but when you get people storming the mart or spraying graffiti like has been happening, that's when individuals feel threatened, and that's really when it's not okay. But then, of course, you do get death threats, which is quite ironic coming from people that want peace for animals and everything.
What's going on in there is extreme. What's happening to these animals is extreme. If there were dogs in there, people's pet dogs that they care about, they'd be helping us. The public would be helping us stop those trucks. The public would be trespassing too.
And if you want to read more about this, you can see it online on the BBC News site. It's currently one of the most read stories of today. Obviously, do send us your views as well. Let me introduce you to Earthling Ed. He's a vegan activist and social media star. Morning to you.
Morning.
Paul Tompkins is here. He's a farmer who gets called rapist dozens of times every week on Twitter by vegans. Hello to you.
Morning.
And Dr. Jude Capper is a dairy industry campaigner and a former vegan. Thank you all very much for talking to us. Paul, what we saw in our reporter's film were peaceful, non-violent action by the Save Movement. They were not committing any criminal offences, were they?
No, they weren't. Sadly, though, this is the sort of language that, as a dairy farmer, I'm being exposed to every day on my farm. I milk cows back on my farm majority of the time. And the very nature of farming means that we're an open, transparent way of life. You just have to look over any hedge or stone wall and you'll see what we're up to. But I guess that, and of course farmers engage in social media these days as well. But I guess one of the vulnerabilities we have as a result of having footpaths across our land and like I say, just the other side of a hedge means that we are vulnerable to this sort of activism. And like you say, I receive messages online calling me a rapist or murderer or torturer. But you can turn... Well, I guess it causes some distress, but you can turn your telephone off and not look at it. I have colleagues that unfortunately also have been directly targeted. They have footpaths. I know I was speaking to a farmer just the other day who have a footpath across their land, and a family jumped over the fence and they thought, oh, they must need a wee or something, I'll go and see if I can help. But were confronted in a very aggressive manner and accused of doing all sorts to his animals. And the most distressing part of all is that some children were there as well. And I think this is becoming more widespread. I hear from it more often. Another farmer was telling me that the first they heard was the counter-terrorism police ring up to say there's a video of you online that you should be aware of. This is taken overnight, obviously in a way that's there to promote a certain way of life or a certain way of looking at farming. But that farmer has no right to ask for that video to be withdrawn, even though the protesters have come onto the farm, filmed it overnight. And you've got to remember that these farms are actually where we live as well.
Let me bring in Ed then. I mean, the kind of things that Paul has just described there, do you condone that?
No, certainly not. But I think it's important to add that as a social media vegan, I get a torrent of abuse from farmers as well. Like, I get death threats sent to me. I have farmers saying they're going to events where I'm at and they're going to hurt me, stuff like that. But most worryingly, I have farmers who message me saying they're going to go abuse an animal, they're going to go shoot a calf, they're going to go hurt their pigs because I've irritated them. Now, I don't believe that this is acceptable from any side at all, but what I think is really important to note is perspective. And in this situation, it's neither Paul or myself who are the victims. The only victim in this situation is the animal, because they're the one that's kind of the knife pulled across their throat. They're the ones who suffer and ultimately die. And although words are not very nice, the actions of what we do to animals are significantly worse than any words that can be said to either of us.
You have, as far as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, you've openly trespassed on property as part of your activism, which is not breaking criminal law, it is breaking civil law. Why don't you do what other people do when they object to something, which is write to your MP, write to the Environment Secretary, get a debate going and try to get the law changed using the normal democratic process?
Well, if we look at any social justice movement throughout history, laws have always been far behind, and laws always kind of are struggling to catch up with the activism of its time.
Granted.
Now, as you say, trespass is a civil offence, it's not a criminal offence. I think this whole idea that farmers are using fear of trespass is a distraction, and they're not scared of the trespass, and what they're scared of is what the footage and the information is showing. And because of trespass, a civil offence, we're showing a whole hidden industry that, I mean, Paul said that farming is transparent. It's anything but transparent. The things that we do to animals in terms of the mutilations are not transparent. What happens in slaughterhouses is not transparent. And even on a dairy farm, things like the male calves and the female calves being separated from their mothers, many people don't know that. In fact,
Respond to that.
Well, back on my farm, Ed, we are transparent. You know, I enjoy using social media to show people exactly what we do. Many farmers also engage in events such as Open Farm Sunday, which is a time of the year when we can open our gates and invite the local community to come around and have a real look at what we're doing. What I would suggest is that activism is perhaps discouraging farmers from doing this. So although you may ask for an open, transparent way of looking at farming, when we do provide this, the counter effects that we receive is the distressing incidents I've just told you about.
I mean, do you show the people that come to your farm things like the artificial insemination? Do you show them what happens to the calves? Do you show them the pens they're kept in for up to 8 weeks at a time where they're not allowed to see their mums, they're allowed to nurture, they're allowed to socialise? Do you take them to the slaughterhouse as well and show the knife being pulled across their throat? Or do you keep that bit hidden and just show kind of the cows grazing and being fed?
I like to think that we show everyone the full spectrum of farming.
Do you, or you either do or you don't?
Well, I like to think that we do, yes.
So do you show the people that come to your farm what happens to the dairy cows that are taken from their mother?
Yes.
And do you show the fact that they suckle on people's fingers because they want to suckle from their mother to obtain the milk that we take that is rightfully for them?
Well, the arguments that Ed's portraying are some of the management practices that we use on farm every day. And I guess one of the things that we can agree on, although we've highlighted a lot that we don't, is that what we really should be looking at is educating everyone, the consumer that enjoys spreading melted butter or delicious cheeses across their toast, exactly how that is produced. And I think that's one thing that we can both agree on, that what we need to do is show everyone how we produce food in our country, because I guess what we sometimes forget is that we all need a farmer 3 times a day. And the truth is that 98% of people enjoy consuming cheeses and butters and yogurts. So let's get out and show them really how that is properly done. And I'd encourage anyone to do so by the engaging events like I've just suggested, like Open Farm Sunday. Farmers are on social media these days, you know, even when broadband does allow. So come and see what's really going on your local farm.
Let me bring in Jude Capper. You were a vegan, I think, for a year, and then I think you began to go out with a dairy farmer and things changed. So what is your stance now?
Absolutely. I don't have any ag background at all. I grew up in Oxford, and back in high school between the age of 15 and 16, I was a vegan. Back then, of course, there was no Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and so on, but I did believe the things that I was told because as a person outside agriculture, I didn't understand farming. I started talking to farmers. I dated a dairy farmer, lived on a dairy farm and found that it was a very different picture. And certainly over the last 10 to 15 years going all over the world to dairy farms, I can categorically say dairy farmers care for their animals every day. But what I found really difficult, I had breast cancer 15 years ago now, and I was told just this morning that because I'm celebrating the dairy industry through a Twitter campaign called Febudairy, they hope that my cancer comes back. And claims like this are really difficult to deal with in a culture where we should have tolerance, respect, and be accepting of people's different dietary beliefs and different lifestyles.
Let me bring so many of you getting in touch with this. I've got some comments which I'll read in a moment, but I want to bring in Dougie, who's got in touch. He's in East Sussex. He used to work on an organic beef farm, but decided to go vegan 5 months ago. Hi, Dougie.
Hello, yes, hi.
Why?
Yeah, so I guess, as you mentioned, I used to work on an organic beef farm, and I was just indoctrinated as everyone else in terms of the humane slaughter and our organic beef farm that I used to work on is the animals are actually really well looked after, and I would say to people, you know, come down, look, it's almost like paradise for these animals here. But then there's a little bit in the middle, the slaughterhouse, and you know, people say it's humane slaughter, and that's just a marketing ploy, basically. Humane and slaughter couldn't be further apart.
But farmers have to abide by Department for the Environment guidelines in how they treat animals, whether it's cows, pigs, whatever. They are slaughtering the animals according to those guidelines.
Yes, no, I agree. I think guidelines are in place. But there's the facts that the massive amounts of animals that are being killed every single day. And you can watch some of the slaughterhouse footage and CCTV footage, and you'll see that these guidelines that are in place in terms of like stunning the animal, a lot of the time some of these poor animals are being stunned, but the stunning isn't actually having an effect on them, so they're still fully conscious when they have their throat split open, which is very unpleasant.
Ed, coming back to you, I mean, this footage is online. Yeah. If people want to see it, they can see it.
But people don't want to see it because they know that what's in the footage is upsetting.
Right. And that's their choice. And then they can carry on eating meat without waking up at night.
If it's not good enough for your eyes, why is it good enough for your stomach? If you can't face the reality, how can you morally justify paying for it to continue?
It's their choice.
What about the choice of the animals who have a preference to live their life? You see, we can eat other things. It's not a necessity for us to eat animal products. We can survive and thrive on a plant-based diet. So in effect, it's unnecessary. So these animals should be given their preference, which is to live their life without our exploitation of them.
Laura says on Twitter, not all vegans are activists in this manner. We are destroying the earth with large plots of land used for farming and for crops in order to feed the animals. Never mind the amount of water used too. Lucy says, I've been mostly vegan since 1995. I support the activists. I used to be one. Many meat eaters turn a blind eye to the cruel meat-eating regimes. If you cannot kill the animal, butcher it yourself, then you shouldn't eat it. And Sarah says, I went vegan about a year ago, but I've actually considered it for many years. I saw the militant vegans and was completely put off. Their attitude was, if you can't cut it all out, then you're a failure. So I resumed eating meat. but no dairy. Because what was the point in even trying if I was unable to attain their apparent perfection? What is your ultimate goal?
So the world that we want is ideally a vegan world. So that's a world where people understand that the exploitation of animals is unnecessary and has no place in contemporary society. What we have to ask ourselves is, are a taste preference worth more than the life of an animal? Because, you know, a meal to us lasts a matter of minutes, but death for an animal is eternal. They have one chance of life. What right do we have to take it from them just because we enjoy the taste of their flesh in a sandwich?
Well, farmers are here to provide... Oh, sorry, Victoria. No, please. Farmers are here to produce what the consumer wants. We're a demand-led industry, and we'll continue to provide great, nutritious food. And I don't want to leave either of you the impression that farmers are stood in their fields, quaking in their wellies, wondering about activists. The reality is that we've got a lot more to worry about on farm, you know, like the health and happiness of our animals, the productivity of our farms, and, of course, that looming challenges of Brexit coming up ahead. So the reality is that everyone has the choice to eat what they choose. I respect that choice, but I'd go further and ask everyone that at this time, to whatever you decide to choose to eat, to just choose to back British farming.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you very much.